husband got offered the job of editor of the Oyster Bay Guardian.
Ah.
He used to be Middle East correspondent of the Daily Express.
Okay, so you met him in London, and
we met him in London. We got married, and we moved out to the North Shore of Long Island, to Oyster Bay.
Now I see how you got to America. That was the gap I was missing.
That's
okay.
it. And after various vicissitudes, I don't want to explain what happened, but suffice to say, we ended up down and out in Alexandria, Virginia, and my husband got a job 12 hours a night as a dishwasher at a Greasy Spoon on the Jefferson Davis, and I met him at the kitchen door and handed him the baby at 6 in the morning, and I did 8 hours as a waitress.
Good heavens.
And that was fantasy was good there, because I used to treat these truckers as if they were in an expensive French restaurant. I'd shake the napkins out for them in a little lap, and I got very good tips. Because the usual reply was, why don't you shut your cotton picking mouth, from the other waitresses if they wanted to know where the food was.
Right.
Know? And then we had, Rupert Murdoch was starting a paper in New York, so my husband went out and got a job as deputy news editor, and I got a job as deputy picture editor.
So now you've gone from Alexandria and you're in Brooklyn.
Yes, yes, we moved to Brooklyn. We were down in the Italian area, just below Brooklyn Heights.
Oh, right.
Which was very nice, all these old-fashioned brownstones, and my son got to a very good school for gifted children in Brooklyn Heights, and I thought it was good. He said it was for children whose parents were gifted with money, because, because the school fees were very high, but he was happy, and that was all that mattered. That was all that mattered, and that was the impetus to start writing Regencies.
Ah, money for school fees.
As well as, well, my husband was earning, but the school fees were very high.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're back to where we started, which was you were in Brooklyn going to Scotland to go fishing when you had this idea for Hamish Macbeth. You were published, the Regency books were published at St. Martin's. Was Hope your editor for those?
The first, yes. The first editor I had was Barbara Dix at Fawcett.
Okay.
The first book I wrote with Regency Gold. And then how I got to know Hope was I'd done a six-volume hardback series for a British publisher called The Six Sisters. And Barbara Lowenstein, my agent, was trying to sell it during the great Regency slump of 1982, I think.
Yes.
That was when they overloaded the market with Regencies that were historically inaccurate, and believe me, whether the reader knows history or not, they can smell it.
Well, I think Regency readers, because it's a manageable time frame.
Yes.
You know, I grew up reading Georgette Hare, so I feel that I was really well grounded, at least in the historical aspects of it. And yeah, you do sense when they put a foot wrong.
I found it fascinating. I found in a lot of cases I had to go back to the source, because a lot of the history books made mistakes. Even Sir Arthur Conan Doyle in Rodney Stone, which is his story of a Regency buck, possibly because he was closer to the period, he makes the mistake of having them in 1805 driving down across the downs and seeing the domes of the Brighton Pavilion, of course, which hadn't been built then.
That's right.
And so you have to go back to the diaries, newspapers. In fact, I have Mrs. Fitzherbert's niece's diaries, and the debutantes then, they would have sounded like Miss Piggy to us today, you know, bad French, and the intense femininity. We always think of them as being women kept down against the will, but actually there was a great deal of acceptance. God put you in your appointed station. If you were a woman, you were the lesser person. Highly intelligent women's work survives because, of course, they didn't believe it, you know.
Right.
But the ordinary ones, it was amazing how the mind could be taken up with so much trivia.
Well, it was. There was an obsession with fashion, for example. That's certainly one thing you learn if you read Hare and people who write high quality. There's today, I was just looking at a catalog yesterday. in which it described a particularly dark and sexy Regency novel, and I said to my staff, that's an oxymoron.
Yes,
you know,
it
you can't
is.
have a sexy Regency novel. I mean, it was very much, they're very much comedies of manners or novels of manners, and, you know, it's not, whatever eroticism there is all done according to the, you know, the orchestrated social rules and so forth.
That's right.
I'm sure people were just as sexy, but, you know, their overt behavior was rather different.
It was people under aspic, and then there was a lot of intensity of romance.
Right.
In Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, if I remember rightly, she falls in love with him because there's been free sex for everyone, and suddenly there's someone she can't have because he's an alien, he's unclean, you know.
Right.
So she falls in love. That unless you have an essence of the unattainable, there is no romance.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
That is because there is a period of being in love,
Right.
which is not real. It is not real. It is romantic. It is wonderful, and you think that you and the person are absolute soulmates. And 18 months later, if you're lucky, you're looking across the table at someone you don't really know, and it all comes down to what did you do with my socks? And you have to move on to real love, which takes an awful lot of work.
I think my favorite of all the Georgette Hare books in lots of ways is it's not The Convenient Marriage, it's A Civil Contract.
Yes.
Because she does explore that, you know, where the hero is desperately in love with, you know, the girl of his youth and his dreams, but reality has entered, his family fortunes are shattered, he has to make a good marriage for money to preserve everything. And yet the wife that he ends up with probably was the wife that he, you know, that he needed.
Yes.
And
yes,
he
I
had
thought that was very clever, that
She
one.
did, she did.
And she handled it very well.
It's not as romantic as the other ones, but I think it's far more realistic. I think it's much more about life than, say, the Corinthian, you know, where the little girl dangles out the window disguised in boy's clothes while she's supposed to make a good marriage, and she chooses to elope, and the Corinthian, who is being pressured into doing the same, is taken with her.
Yeah,
you know?
but that was a lovely, almost comedy of manners.
Absolutely.
And the thing about romantic fiction is you don't really want reality, in a way.
No. But you have to ask if a 17-year-old girl and a 34-year-old man from such diverse backgrounds are really going to be happy when the romance is over. Whereas in a civil contract, you know, you see how it's all working out, and clearly they were going to have at least, if not an ecstatic life, at least a very satisfactory life together.
Yes, yeah.
So anyway, I think they're lots of fun. Unfortunately, I think most Regency romances being written today are missing that whole point. You know, they're trying to do, I think, a modern romance with an historical background, and so they're just missing the whole point of the Regency.
There's a lot of bandwagoning goes on, in that people end up writing what they should not really be writing because they're told this is coming market.
Right.
And it's not a good thing to do, because you can't write what you don't enjoy reading.
Or if you're not well grounded in it,
if you don't get the feeling for the almost claustrophobic feeling of the Regency, with the modes and manners and the snobbery and the gentility, you know.
Do you still write them?
No, I don't.
It seemed to me it had been quite a while. Your first was what, in 1978?
That's right. And the last was about, I can't remember, about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago. They have a life of about 6 weeks on the shelves.
Oh, is it that short, even in the hardcover ones?
I don't know in the hardcover ones, but I know in the paperback. And it's a very middle category, very loyal readership, you know. But never going to be very immensely popular. Largely, again, because they did flood it with an awful lot of... I mean, there is one famous Regency where the Regency buck is tooling his curricle through the English countryside with the heroine, and he reins in under a hickory tree to admire the pink geraniums sprouting in the fields.
Oh, no.
And when he gets her to his stately home, She's delighted of a bathroom en suite.